Cool. I'm hoping people can see this. Okay, guys. Hi, guys. I'm just going to move this. I'm not sure it's very clear. I'm hoping you can see. Let me know if there is a problem and I'll move because I'm in my classroom today and there's lights coming in at the wrong angle. Hoping you're okay. Hey, how you doing? I hope you're okay. We've got another one joining, which is amazing. I'll give it a couple of seconds and then we'll go for a... I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm okay. It's a bit weird that everyone's going back to school very soon, and when I'm teaching lessons and people are going, I'm really worried about going back to school, and it's like, it's okay, everyone's in the same boat. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't have to go back to school this year. It's really weird. I just get to do this all the time. Quite like it. So I haven't got the fear, but school will be fine. It'll be good. Worry not. We're just going to look at a Christmas carol today because that was requested. And again, it doesn't matter, even if you're not studying a Christmas carol, it's just this language analysis. It's that 3-step process. And this will probably be my last live session because when we go back to school in September, my assumption is that you guys aren't going to need it or want it. So it's just a case of waiting to sort of see how we go. But in my head, I'm thinking this might be our last one for a little while, and then I'll start doing revision workshops and things like that for you. But today, we're just thinking solitary as an oyster, which is probably the most common quote that people think of when they think of Scrooge. And that doesn't make it a bad thing. Lots of students quote Scrooge. This is the first thing that comes into their head. What's different and what we're going to talk about today is to not just be stating the obvious. Because as an examiner, you can read 1,000 papers, 1,000 answers that just say, oh, well, the simile as solitary as an oyster shows that he's a really close person. Well, yeah, it does. But to get those higher grades, we've got to follow, and you should be getting used to it now, that 3-step process. So step 1, essentially, what is it? The literal meaning. Step 2, start to pick out words, focus on them in more detail because analysing language is really important. And then step 3, putting that into context. Hi, Evie. Putting that into context with the rest of the characters or the themes that are in that text. Okay. As I'm going through, guys, if you've got any questions or anything that you kind of just want to ask or go, oh, I didn't think it worked like that, I thought we had to do this, please just make a comment, and then when they come up, I will respond, hopefully. Okay, so we'll make a start because it's just gone 6. So as I've just said, we're going to look at the quote as solitary as an oyster, which hopefully we'll notice it is a simile. Now, it's taken from a bigger quote about him, where we kind of have this idea that he is a really closed person. So what we want to do is start with literal meaning. Okay, so literal meaning is this simile suggests that Scrooge is closed because an oyster has a hard shell and it is closed. So in our most obvious simple format, that's what we want to be saying. And that's perfect. That's the great start. But we need to build that up to go up the grades. So then we have to pick apart our language and we want to think, okay, solitary. What does solitary actually mean? It means to exist on your own. Okay. And something that is solitary, a person or a thing, it can exist, it can survive on its own. And it kind of is quite happy, like it's happy to do that. Okay. Just realised that actually means enough. So we've got solitary. But what does that then say about our characters? Because if we don't link it to the text and link it to our characters, we're not getting those top marks. So really, what's being suggested by the word solitary is that he isolates himself from others. Scrooge chooses to be solitary. He doesn't have to be. As human beings, we are actually sociable people. He chooses to exclude himself and chooses to take himself and lock himself away in that shell. And that's where the difference is about him. That what Dickens is suggesting here, because remember, Scrooge represents the higher classes, he's choosing to lock himself away from society. He's choosing to keep all of that wealth and everything to himself and share it with nobody. And that's what Dickens wants to sort of open up and release to improve society. So that's the difference between saying, oh, there's a simile, and then saying there's a simile and I've got all this to talk about. Okay. Then we can look at oyster. And I've already mentioned this, but it does link. So oysters, literal meaning, they live at the bottom of the sea. Okay. That's what they do. They live on the seabed. And so that links nicely to the fact that they exist alone in the deep, away from everything else. And obviously, an oyster has a solid shell. I don't know if you've ever tried, you can't open an oyster. Like, it's extreme force. They are so tightly shut, they choose to open. And that's what we're going to talk about in a second. So we have this idea of they're happy to be solitary, suggesting that he is closed in that shell, the same as the oyster. But an oyster contains a pearl. And this is the bit where students fall down. They mention everything I've said up until this point, which is good. You're going to get grade 5, but forget that actually the whole purpose of this is that oysters contain a pearl. Okay. Now, if we then break that down, a pearl is inside this hard outer shell. And if the shell chooses to open up, it will release that pearl. And that's what we want to be talking about. That's where we go into 7s, 8s, and 9s. So a pearl is a precious stone. I've written a gem because it goes with English gems, and we are gems. So it's a nice kind of way to remember it, but it means something precious. And that doesn't really match what we think of Scrooge at this point, and that he's hard and cold and sharp and mean. So what Dickens is doing here is suggesting that there might be more to him than meets the eye. Okay, so we have this precious stone, and essentially, once you've prized open your oyster and you take out this pearl, which is worth money, has lots of significance. It shows that this hard outer exterior was actually protecting something, and there is something beautiful inside. So here is where I then link it back to the characters, link it back to the text. It's suggesting that there might be good within him, that perhaps somewhere buried deep at the bottom of the sea, isolated away and living alone, somewhere within all of that outer shell, if you could crack it, if it chose to open, there would be something precious inside. So perhaps within him, there is good. Okay. Now, again, you could stop there and your 5's gone into a 6. But we're going to do one more thing, because it's always that context. What is it that we need to kind of know? Where do we need to push this further? So why? Writer's purpose, most important thing to talk about as much as you can. Why have they done it? Why an oyster? Why choose this to describe him? Okay. Now we need to remember that Dickens, first of all, wants us to question ourselves, the way that we behave, the way that we interact, how we are within society, because perhaps there's things about ourselves that we could change. Okay. If we put that into the context of Victorian readers, they have a very, which I'm hoping you know about, the class system. So Scrooge is representing a higher class, and then we have Tiny Tim and the Cratchit family, who are the lower class. And what he's trying to show is that actually you need to look after others. And so I've sort of mentioned the class system, but essentially he's basically kind of giving hope and trying to teach people that if Scrooge can change, And he's like the ultimate closed, hard, sharp, nasty person. If he can open up and be good, it's buried within every single one of us. And he's trying to change the society. So he wants everybody to then think, oh, actually, maybe the upper classes, maybe what we should be doing, we should be looking after other classes. We should be working as a society, as a whole, supporting one another. And that's why Scrooge goes from being so like unbelievably like extreme in his cold, harsh nastiness to then when he opens up and he's a completely different person, it's more of a shock, it's more of a surprise. So really the message there, the why, the 7 pluses, we're all capable of change. It's there if we want to do it. You have to work at it, but it's there. It may be buried very, very deep, but it's there. And that essentially is what he's trying to do. Now, there's tons of information there that would make a really good paragraph. We're not just talking about a grade 4, oh, there's a simile to describe him as an oyster to show that he's a closed person and then stop talking. There's all those layers that we can keep going through. Now, this is a really great quote to remember and learn in this much depth. If you're then able to pick a quote from the end of the text where he's completely different and you can contrast how he's gone from being closed to being happy, skippy, running around, turning up and giving people food, and he's complete opposite. You find another quote and you compare this one to that one and how he's described, and you're going to have a really strong response in making this argument a bit stronger that we're all capable of change. Because what you're doing in your essay is you're showing he's gone from being this to this, and you're actually showing both sides of him. And if he's capable of doing it, the hardest, coldest, most miserable person in the world, we're all capable of it. And perhaps we should consider society and things like that a little bit more. And I think that's pretty much there in my nutshell for my Scrooge. If you've got any questions, if there's anything you would like to know, please just drop a message. And also, like, schools are going back. I might be able to do one more next week. I can't think off the top of my head dates, but we could potentially do one more. And then I'm going to wait till people are back in school, and then I'll probably just run bigger revision sort of workshops and Zoom things and bits and bobs. But please don't ever think you can't message me and you can't ask, or just drop me a line and go, oh, I'm helping, can you just do this? Evie, I will be putting together poetry videos for you if you're still continuing with poetry. We'll find out soon. I'm just waiting for schools to start, so I have a little bit of time. 5 kittens and a 6-year-old is a lot of work. And yeah, that's me done, really. I think I'm there. So if you haven't got any questions, I hope you found that helpful. Even if you're not studying Christmas Carol, really helpful to go through the process of breaking things down, picking out words, talking about them in more detail. But yeah, I think I'm done. So thanks, Evie. I do miss you. I really do. Anything you need. Oh, hi, Ted. You've kept quiet. I hope you liked last week's Ted. And if you need any more, just give us a shout. But you are all welcome, and I hope you have had a wonderful summer. Don't freak out about school. It will be okay, I promise. And yeah, hopefully bump into you all in an actual human form at some point, which would be lovely. Okay, bye guys, take care.